And welcome everybody back to Swinging from the Hips, your place for everything cricket and your cricket fix. And welcome to my fellow presenters, Baker extraordinaire Rohit over down there, and Taryn. Welcome back, guys. How you doing?
Hey, good, thanks.
Very
Good.
good.
Hey,
How'd that chocolate cake turn out, Rohit?
it was a treat, and everyone enjoyed it. To be honest.
Well, we're going to crack straight into it today because we've got a special guest coming up a bit later. So why don't we get whack into it straight away there, Rohit, and this week in history.
Well, yes, this week in history we have back in May, 2nd of May, 1969. One Brian Charles Lara, yes, was born on this day with a high test score of 400 runs, highest first class score of 501 for Warwickshire. Amazing. Controversy on the 3rd of May 1978, with Australia poised to win the 5th Test in Jamaica, the crowd rioted. With one more wicket to fall, or required, shall we say, and 38 balls left, the crowd took the matter into their own hands, invading the field. So, the game could have been completed the next day. However, umpire Ralph Goosen refused to stand. So the Aussies missed out on a win there. How unfortunate. Historic moment. Historic moment in the women's game. On the 5th of May, 2010, West Indies player Deandra Dutton, she scored the first 100 in a women's T20 international match. Well done. She scored 100 of 38 balls against South Africa. That's some hitting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's sort of like, just to sort of go on that. This is like, it's not like it's just a runnable 100 or anything. It's actually it's at a decent strike rate as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you watch the women's game, it's the strike rate's not as high as that would have been, I feel. And finally, 7th of May 1980, our very own Jeetan Patel was born in Wellington, New Zealand.
Hang on, I thought there was like a real high standard here for birthday wish.
But he's our very own.
Oh no, family connections, so he gets a mention.
Yeah, that's the family connection.
I'll jump in there. Jeetan gets a mention because my brother-in-law actually used to play with him in the backyard, and they grew up in Wellington together. So they broke a few windows at both their parents' places. So I thought I'd chuck him in there and give him a birthday shout out. So his birthday on the 7th of May.
No, sweet. If Jeetan's going to get a mention, I think you've got to mention Yasser Shah had a birthday 2 days ago as well. That dude's only got what was our prerequisite? 200 odd test wickets. I think he's got about 220 odd in 30 test matches.
Oh, that's okay. So Yasser also a happy birthday out to him. And this is like always. I enjoyed watching him. He was the bowler, but I enjoyed watching his bat as well. And he always had that grin on his face as well.
Yeah. Not like me to know the stats of another leg spinner, but yeah. For their birthday.
Is that an opportunity to throw to your stats to just put out a few there?
Well, I actually know it's my birthday tomorrow though.
Oh, there we
go. Hang on now. We can't preempt any of the this week in history for next week. Yeah. That's for next week now.
Yes.
No. All good. I'll let you keep going, right.
That came out from the left field, but hey, Yasser Shah, happy birthday, mate. So, look, I think that's pretty much us with the week in history for this week. And
we know what's coming up next week. We know what's coming up next week is Taryn's birthday. So look forward to that one in the stats.
You got to be 200 plus wickets to make the list.
Yeah, but we didn't say international though.
Oh, fair enough.
We're just seeing in the chat room, it's possibly Brian Charles Lara shares his birthday with Vladimir Putin. Thanks, Rohit, for that back in the day news there, and we'll move into the modern times. And Taryn with the news this week.
Yeah, news this week. Well, it's making waves now with all the COVID stuff that's going on. It's the questions we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. How do you shine a ball without saliva or sweat? Well, Kookaburra, the ball manufacturer, have come up with the possible solution. They're proposing a wax applicator, some sort of a sponge thing that I think you carry in your pockets if you're a normal cricketer, but if you're an Australian, you can throw it in your undies if someone's looking, like Kevin Backcroft did with that piece of string, supposedly. But yeah, in all seriousness, they seem to think it's something that's viable and it's probably going to go ahead. Reality is, though, they haven't had a chance to try it because there have been no cricket games. Unless they can ship it out to Vanuatu, then they can see how that goes out there. So Kookaburra coming up with the Vax applicator replica or a replacement for saliva and sweat. That's the big one. Obviously, Cricket Australia is possibly going to come into about $50-odd million from a long-term partner in a few weeks' time, I believe. But obviously, that's not gone down too well, considering they've asked 80% of their staff to take a pay cut or be redundant. So that's not gone down well. On a financial front, Tom Harrison from CEO of ECB, they've forecasted £380 million in losses. Big fears for women's cricket on that front, with all that money being projected to be lost. Female cricketers are worried they might be wearing the brunt of it. First summer at Lords without any cricket in 233 years, and the cost of no play there has been £30 million. On a playing field, we discussed at length the Gale saga last week. He's obviously off to St. Lucia to join Darren Sammy. We've now got Ramden being released out of Trinidad and Tobago, or Trinity Knight Riders, TKR. And he's off to St. Kitts and Nevis. Not a bad spot. While Braithwaite, who's been skippering St. Kitts, has been released. No word of where he's going. St. Kitts will now be captained by Rayad Emrit, the 39-year-old fast bowler from Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, that's and the other big one has been talk of Multan Sultans, the PSL franchise owners, and KKR, which also owns TKR in CPL, expressing interest in purchasing a stake in the 100, which obviously we'll go into a bit more detail in both the saliva front on the franchise ownership when we get our special guest on the show.
Hey, Tom.
I think, yeah, go, Roy. What were you saying?
I was going to say, what's your thoughts around this applicator that they're going to use on the ball?
I don't know. I really don't know how it's going to work. I like.
Do you think it's a bit? I mean, like, obviously one of the players, obviously they always go for players for comments coming out, and sort of like, I think it might have been Simon Dool, ex-player, saying that it's more of a gimmick because Kookaburra balls always struggle to swing anyway, whereas your Dukes and your SGs have got swing in them anyway.
Yeah, SGs don't swing. SGs
They don't swing?
Okay. Name your three favorite fast bowlers in the world ever. I doubt you're going to pick an Indian or an Indian, because they're the only ones that use SGs.
SGs, yeah.
I
What do you think, Roy?
I don't know. It seems a little bit unnatural in a way for cricket too, isn't it? When
to use external forces to manipulate the ball.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
In the traditional sense, I mean, when you grow up with the traditions of cricket and utilizing it. In saying that, it's just like, as we've mentioned over the last few weeks, it is something that has happened. It's under the radar, whether it's been under the radar inside the pants or Dennis Lilly with the lanolin on the shirt. It's something that has happened. This is sort of bringing it in the open.
It is. I mean,
it doesn't make it as cool anymore, though.
What's that? Sorry.
It doesn't make it as cool anymore if everyone's doing it out in the open.
No, when it's in the open.
Why would you do it? I'm going to put saliva on it just to be a bad boy.
Well, I think that, growing up as a youngster, when you're playing cricket and you got your whites on the Saturday, it was quite fun to get the red patch on your front of your.
You had to go home with the red, or down the front, or on your buttocks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
so Mum could
just now, if you just see a stain in the front of your trousers, though.
Yeah.
What's happened there?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if this applicator is going to do the actual job you expect to see with the wear and tear on the ball and things, or is it actually just going to keep the ball brand new for 60, 70 overs? It'll be really interesting to see how that pans out and how it works on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, when we get our guest on the show, we can kind of pose these questions because he's in that space. But I don't know if you guys remember, maybe 10 years ago, Canterbury came out with these shiny trousers, and they were basically designed for sliding on the turf, but also to buff up the ball. And I just wonder if somebody's just going to find something where you'll literally have a shine patch where you can just buff the ball on the front of your trousers.
Yeah, or basically even what about if it's like we're talking about maintaining the ball? What about if you prematurely degraded the ball? So we're talking about one side. So you got asbestos trousers that give that rough surface to really scuff up one side.
Maybe you could have the shiny side on one side of your pants and sandpaper on the other side of your pants. So,
Crikey! Next thing you know, you're walking down the catwalk.
Hey, if COVID came about 2 years ago, those 3 Australians wouldn't have been done.
Wow, it could have been called innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been legal.
Yeah.
Just one of the other items in the news there, just with the ECB and on a bit of information that I've sort of got over the last few days or so. They presented to a sports and cultural committee for COVID for the British government, and with 4 other major sports, trying to convince them of loosening up the strings and then basically going through, and as we've talked about in our previous shows, it's not looking good for any cricket happening in the UK this year, and they're looking at playing outside. Well, if it doesn't, that's the $380 million loss, and that's the $30 million loss for Lords and no cricket there, sort of thing. So it's a total sort of no cricket type scenario there, and the losses that would be incurred.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? 233 years.
Yeah. I mean, like my son, when was just sitting on the couch before, and coincidentally he asked me, "Oh, so what was played first, cricket or rugby?" And it's like, yeah, most definitely cricket. It's just amazing to think how it's been going.
If that's true, the 233 years, did they play cricket through the war? I'm surely there was no cricket through the World War.
No, that's what basically the article that I read. That they even carried on. There was cricket at Lords through the war years as well. So this will be the first time where there wasn't any cricket of any
like
sort.
Proper jazzman cricket, like just.
Look, absolutely, it would have been maybe a bit of village cricket or something like that happening.
Man, there's nothing wrong with village cricket. Absolutely,
no, absolutely not. Got to keep the spirits up.
Yes.
So that's the backbone of cricket. Village cricket, England, village cricket, Sunday cricket. Best part. If you've not experienced cricket in England, you haven't lived as a cricketer.
Anyway, we'll better move on so that we can get through to our guest. Well, one more little thing that we want to get through before we get to our guest, and that's something that would like Rohit's like to do, is in terms of one for the keepers. So I'll pass the role over to Rohit, or Rolly as he was known on the playing field, and his tribute to Smithy.
Yes, one for the keepers. Being a former keeper myself, so. My very own favourite player, Ian Smith, was honoured last week, I think it was now, by New Zealand Cricket for his outstanding services to cricket. So he joins the other members, Walter Hadley, Merv Wallace, John Reid, Graham Dowling, Richard Hadley, and Ewan Chatfield. So Smithy's been honoured for outstanding services to cricket, and he's managed to call the last 112 Test matches at home. So that's some quite outstanding record there in its own right, isn't it? And some memorable matches for him while he was commentating was Brendan McCullum's 300, the Test wins at Lords, Ross Taylor's 290 in Hobart. Who could ever forget that? The draw at Eden Park against England. Gosh, I was on the edge of my seat most of that day watching that Test. And
is that 97?
What's that?
Is that the 97 one? What draw was that?
No. That was only a few years ago.
Yeah, it was only a few years ago, and we had to get one wicket, didn't we? And
we had to get one wicket, and they were holding out. Yeah, basically, you had the
wicket. We needed one wicket for the win, and Matt Pryor batted the last.
Matt Pryor, and I think Monty was at the other end.
Yeah. He used to get those draws, didn't he?
Oh man, that was really frustrating as a spectator and sports fan. There, you were preying on that one wicket, But then, I hate to bring up scars, but he also managed to call that final at Lords last year, and who could ever forget that? So Smithy, he played 63 tests for New Zealand and 98 ODIs between 1980 and 1992. And one of his most memorable things watching Smithy was his 173 runs off 136 balls to rescue New Zealand from the 131 for 7 against India in Auckland at Eden Park. Now, I remember watching Smithy at Eden Park against the Indians, and that was an amazing, amazing knock. I don't know if any of you other guys saw that.
Yep, absolutely. I remember that knock because my favourite player, Richard Hadley, was at the other end for most. It was a partnership between Richard Hadley and Ian Smith that basically rescued New Zealand. I can't remember. I think Richard Hadley might have got 100 as well, and Ian Smith carried on.
Yeah, it was one of those for the record books, that's for sure. That knock, because back in those days, who sort of had those sort of strike rates?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a very unique strike rate for back in those days for a test match.
Absolutely. So Hadley scored 87 in that game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's a little tribute from the Keeper's Corner for our very own Ian Smith.
And you got to say one of the great middle names in world cricket as well, Stockley.
Absolutely. Oh,
Ian Stockley
Smith.
Ian David Stockley Smith. Yes.
Absolutely. Can't believe.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that little tribute to Ian Smith, and as you said, one for the keepers, being your fellow keeper there as well, and your hero from playing that. We all have our heroes. Taryn, you have one hero while you were growing up playing backyard cricket before you got your black shirt yourself?
Oh, that was a long time between growing up and getting a black shirt.
Did you have a favorite player?
Azruddin? Mohammed Azruddin? Yeah. He was obviously from the same part of the world from where I'm from, or my parents are from. So that was a name that you just happen to support because he's from your state or city.
Right.
So you kind of emulate him, and he was very cool, or so we thought at the time anyway.
And it's interesting just to comment from the old chat room there as well, is that Ian Smith's favourite shot was the cut shot. I think back in the day, every wicket keeper's favourite shot was the cut shot.
Oh yeah,
that's all it's on leg stump, and they'd back off and play the cut shot.
Yeah, the only shot.
Otherwise it's the hook as well, because you're short in stature, so you can just jump on the back and round the corner she goes.
Well, that's enough waffle from us, guys, because we've got someone on our show today that we've got as coming on as a guest, and we're really honoured to have him as our first guest on our Swinging from the Hip show. One of our many guests that we hope to have in the future and bring to you, and that is Tausif Sati, former professional cricketer from Pakistan, where he played domestic cricket, and he moved to New Zealand almost a decade ago and played domestic cricket here, and also being, I think, the professional for Northland. Tausif played professional cricket around the world and has successful career as an administrator as well as apparel manufacturer, running his own cricket equipment company, Taz Cricket. Welcome to Swinging from the Hip, Tausif, or as everybody knows you, Taz.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me over, guys.
No worries. And how are you doing? How's things going for you during this shutdown or lockdown period for you?
Yeah, it's for work-wise, it's obviously a bit slow for the last few weeks. This is the right time for England. So we do a lot of sales in England and like Europe in general for cricket. So I think, it's probably we have to wait for the preseason for Australia and New Zealand now. So, but that's one of those things with everyone being affected by COVID-19. So just taking our time now.
Oh, it's a difficult time for many, isn't it? And it's just like it's a great time to look forward to seeing what the future is planning for the future.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, let's get into the issues that we've got you on board for today, and we're going to dive right into it, right from the start. Umar Akmal, let's get your view on what's happened there and how it's all panned out, and give us your view of how that's actually rolled out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like obviously we know that Umar has been in the news for wrong reasons. Like, it's not a secret. You can,
Yep.
but I think like he had a great start to his cricket career. If you remember, like, when he first came to New Zealand in 2009, 2010, and how much praise he got, especially from someone like Martin Crowe, who wouldn't like go in that sort of great extent to praise a player. And he thought that this is a player we'll be talking about for next 15 years. So yeah, he had a great start.
He wasn't
but I
lying though.
think- Pardon?
He was right. He was on the money. Martin Crowe was on the money. We did talk about Umar Akmal a lot, but just for the wrong reasons. We've been talking about Umar Akmal constantly. Every second year, he's popping up in the media in different leagues, all for the wrong reasons, unfortunately.
Taryn, the funny thing is, like, first couple of series, he was the star test batsman for Pakistan team. And they're two tough series, right? Like in Australia, when Tony Greig was commentating, he was like just praising him, like, he just thought that's the next big thing. And funny enough, the next year, I was actually I was looking after a Pakistan team for a tour league, for a game, and he was actually not in the Test playing 11 12 months later.
Oh.
And between those 12 months, he had 4 captains.
Right.
And so there was a lot happening behind the scenes, and so first when he started ODIs, I think Yunus Khan was the captain just after the 2009 T20 World Cup. And a month later, the players had a sort of whatever you can call it. There was some politics or whatever, and they took actually oath in the private room to sort of make sure they vote out Yunus Khan. So, and that's when Umar Akmal.
Was Umar part of this as well? Umar wasn't part of this?
No. So he made his debut after they've, I think, lost the series.
Okay.
So not in the series, but I think 4th game.
Yeah.
And so that's how he got started. So obviously there were a lot of insecurities between the senior members, and from there, obviously, I think Afridi took over. For a shorter format, and Muhammad Yusuf Yohana, as we know him, took over for the longer format. And then that friction kind of stayed with Pakistan team until that thing happened in England. We won't go into that. Muhammad Amir and these guys were get done for obviously spot fixing and stuff. But if you look at first 16 months of Umar Akmal's international career, there was all these things happening behind the scenes. So I'm not too sure if there was much grooming going on, or if he was being sort of mentored at all. I mean, he was only 19, turning 20. So I think it doesn't help when you have a start like that.
Yeah.
So I just jump in there, and it's just like, because you mentioned there about the mentoring or grooming sort of thing. We'll use the word mentoring because grooming might imply something else. But so in Pakistan, how does it work? Because globally we look at the fact that the players have a player manager or somebody that's representing them, even like the players' associations or a players' union. How does that work? Would Umar Akmal have a player manager? Do they have a players' union or association within the Pakistan framework?
Well, I'm not I was involved in Pakistan cricket for a bit, but I've been here for a while now. But I've been sort of talking to my friends who do play cricket over there and still play domestic cricket. I don't think there's a body who actually can protect the rights of players, especially the domestic cricketers underneath as well. So it's almost like you just need to find a guru, like Imran Khan had all these young kids who came through him. But the thing was, Imran Khan was secure. He knew that his place is not in question. Whereas, when Umar Akmal came in, Misbah-ul Haq was made captain from nowhere, a year later, primarily to settle down the team. So it was, I think, overall there was no mentoring, and unfortunately I don't think there is still in a sort of an organization who protects the rights of the cricketers, or who
would you say that kind of creates like a dog-eat-dog kind of mentality amongst cricketers, and it kind of just, do you think that's what it creates in terms of the culture within the like the high performance group?
It can, but I don't think that it will always do that, because like if you see the time afterwards, right? Straight after that thing happened, Pakistan team settled down, right? So
Yeah.
we
Right.
had Misbah Haq and then Azhar Ali and the guys who have different personalities, who were the
Yeah.
senior players, and they kind
Yeah.
of like completely changed the I would say the Pakistan reputation improved during that time. There are
Yeah.
no real issues in like but I mean, I guess what you're trying to say is like not having that sort of organization obviously makes the things difficult, and I agree to that. But on the other hand, like you just need secure players. Like your senior players have to be secure. Like they should be automatic choice.
Well, you've got a very difficult start for a youngster coming in. I mean, like we've seen the classic case of the not saying Umar Akmal was, but the classic case of 16-year-olds being selected for Pakistan type scenario, right? And it's like you've got no protection around them, and if you get the wrong influences coming in, then it can be quite detrimental to a young player, particularly in trying to impress everybody within the team and fit in, because it's a daunting environment, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I was watching an interview of Said Ajmal, and that was his first year as well, like 2009, when he sort of got on sort of got big. And he said like there was these people are voting out the captain, and he felt like he had to be part of it because
Yeah.
all the senior players are doing it, and he kind of he said, well, he couldn't see himself not doing it because the senior players are asking him to do it. So I guess like that does affect.
Is that a
young
cultural
players.
thing then? Is that a cultural thing where you kind of respect the elders and you almost follow what the senior group's doing? As a youngster coming in, you respect, your elders and the seniors in this case, and you just kind of follow through without really having a chance?
Yeah, I think like if you remember that Hansi Kronie saga as well, that it was not for the money, it was more the Hansi Kronie was asking the two young players, and so I think respect is definitely in our cultures, obviously in Pakistan, India, it's probably even more. So it can you have to choose your sort of leaders for countries like Pakistan or India, or like you have to choose your leaders. Like Pakistan ended up doing with Misbah, who was quite subtle and experienced and educated and all that sort of things. If not, then obviously they can easily sort of pressurize the young players to do what they want them to do.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's right.
The question I had was, we all know, it's quite well documented what the Western teams or domestic players in the Western countries, like, your Australia's and New Zealand's and England's earn. Little was known about how much the other countries earn. So domestic players, do they earn a good wage? Like, is it good enough for them not to have to dip into these? Because I'm trying to negate, almost kind of take that point out. Is it because they don't get paid enough that they kind of fall into these honey traps, or kind of even start looking elsewhere?
Well, I guess there are two ways looking at it, right? So the money wise, obviously Pakistan doesn't have I was involved for a few years, but like we're talking about last 20 years, right? They chop and change their domestic cricket structure so much that there's no consistency, right? So that's one thing. Second thing is like they used to have departments who pay okay to the cricketers so they can survive. So there was department cricket,
stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's department cricket, and then there was regional cricket. So they both run parallelly most of the times, and sometimes they play together. So the department cricket players were getting paid okay, and it has improved over the years. Regional cricket, when I was there, we were getting paid, I think it's equal to about $5 a day or something, so it's nothing.
Yeah.
You almost it wasn't much anyways. But it did improve at a certain time when they were getting like something equivalent to $200 or $300 a game, a 4-day game, which was good for Pakistan. But what they've done last couple of years is like Imran Khan has actually sort of all the department cricket has been sort of ceased. So there's no more department cricket. So a lot of professional cricketers who are domestic cricketers lost their earnings, right, for last 12 months. And that's a big thing in Pakistan. And that probably kind of answers your question that obviously there's a lot of insecurity right now. for the players who are not playing international cricket. But PSL, definitely there's some money coming in, but that's really small pool of players. You're still talking about like, maybe another 100 players who lost their living and sort of don't know what to do.
Yeah. So where does that leave them then? Where do the changes leave these players?
So what they've done is like they have done the domestic cricket, like I think 16 competition, but they've done first and second 11 for all the regions.
Right. Okay.
So there's still 12 domestic teams technically, 6 first teams and 6 second teams, and all these guys are getting paid. So there is sort of some sort of, but it's an annual contract anyways, With the department, some of the guys were just employed for ages,
Yeah. So it's basically a takeaway from the New Zealand, or not New Zealand. That's not necessarily true. More like an Australian and English county model, which obviously Imran Khan played in Australia. I'm guessing he played in England, so he was quite favourable to these kind of models. I know I've read a lot where he's talked about Pakistan having too many first-class teams and wanting to go down this road for a long time.
Well, I think like if you look at India, I mean, India's got similar, like they've got heaps of first-class teams as well.
30 odd probably.
Yeah, so I don't think that matters. What Imran Khan was saying was to get more people involved in cricket. Like, say, for example, if Auckland is playing, you will support Auckland, right? But if Air New Zealand is playing, you won't care.
Yeah.
So there were like a lot of domestic games.
Not right now. Not in our household.
But what I'm saying is like there were a lot of banks who have their teams and different departments. They have teams which had really strong teams. Once we played against like an Allied Bank was a team, and they had 10 international players. So they had strong teams, but still people didn't come down to watch because it wasn't like it was a department no one can relate to, So I could see where he was coming from, but he had to do it slowly. He just did it in 1 year.
Yeah. There was no transition. It's like moving from lockdown straight back to normal life.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Now, Tez, while staying on this corruption front, staying on the Pakistani front, I recently read that Salim Malik is now wanting to, give back to Pakistani cricket or return back to the fray in some capacity. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because he got done. There was a Justice Qayyum report in 1998 which came out, and after that he was done for. Obviously, he shouldn't be taking part in cricket at all. But at the same time, it was for his life, and at the same time they said Wasim Akram shouldn't hold a prominent position in leadership position in Pakistan cricket at all. And Wasim Akram was fined as well. So I guess, and then he appealed it because it was one person, like sort of jury, right? It was one person. So he, I think he won the case in 2008. So he's a free man technically since then. And he hasn't been involved in, obviously, and that's what he did. I mean, he made his international debut when he was 19, I think. So pretty much all his adult life he's done cricket, and then obviously this thing happened. So I think last 20 years, I don't know how he's surviving, but it must be hard.
So he wouldn't have had any connection. So basically, he would have been like the Lou Vincent of Pakistan, where he would have been cut away from
pretty
all
much,
the
pretty
grounds.
much, yeah. He wasn't seen anywhere around any of the big events. Like it might have been behind the scenes.
Stay away. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna jump in there and
go on.
Just going to jump in there and wind it back a little bit. So, and it sort of relates to this whole Salim Malik and Wasim Akram bit as well, in terms of, so Umar Akmal is my understanding, sort of like, so with the latest incident where he's been suspended, I think it's 2 years.
3 years.
3 years, sorry. And he represented himself. How does that come about? I mean, why? I mean, what's the judicial process? I mean, like obviously with, a New Zealand, England, Australia, South Africa type view, we know what the judicial process is and how nobody's going to go to any of the, say a court proceeding in any of those countries and represent themselves. They're going to take representation. What would make Umar Akmal think that he could go and represent himself in a situation like that? Or how does it actually work?
Yeah, I think there are two sides to it. So like a lot of things are done internal. So there's like there's an internal inquiry and internal sort of judiciary, like within PCB. I don't know. I'm just taking you back to the 90s. I don't know if you remember where Salim Malik saga started was John the Bookmaker. He was an Indian bookmaker in Sri Lanka, right? So it was 1994, right? And they got, obviously, Mark Waugh and Shane Warne were involved. That was September 1994. Coincidentally, in October 1994, Salim Ali contacted these two guys. So just going to, same two guys, right? Because
it's just information, though, wasn't it? It was.
I don't know. It could be a coincidence, but what I'm saying is the sequence of the things is quite, So just answering your question, Ashwin. So what happened there was Cricket Australia did an inquiry behind the closed doors.
Yes.
And they fined, I think, them for 10 grand or 5 grand each, and that was it. It only came out in 1998 when a newspaper reporter uncovered it, and then they had to go public about it, right?
Right.
And that is when there was a proper judiciary, and they said, well, again, they said these two shouldn't be involved in any leadership, and they should have been fined for a bit more, and XYZ and XYZ. So there was an internal inquiry within Cricket Australia who fined the player. So I think with Umar Akmal, he had issues with Cricket Board a couple of months before this thing happened.
Yes.
For something else. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it just piled up, and he just probably felt like he just he won't get any mercy. So he just
he won't get a fair hearing. So what's the point in trying?
I think that's what his interviews. That's what it appeared.
Is that a coincidence that he has a fallout with the board and suddenly he's been summoned?
Well, it's an interesting one, eh? If you know Shakib Al Hassan from
I was just about to say,
Bangladesh.
Shakib stands up for a players' union. Next thing you know, he's been called in.
Exactly. So, I feel like, Umar Akmal, if you guys know what happened with him, it was like he failed to report an approach early enough. So he did actually tell them, but because he was already having issues with them beforehand, so I feel like, that probably caused the delay. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I think that might have caused the delay. And then obviously they managed to put all those sanctions in. So, same with Shakib Al Hassan as well. As soon as he was the leader of that, not gang, but like he was the leader of the group, who were going for player rights against Bangladesh Cricket Board. And next thing he's done for exactly the same thing, So I don't know if it's a pattern, but.
Probably answers my question from before about player association or player unions, isn't it? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Well, more damned if you do type scenario if you do go and try and create a players association, because it's usually player driven.
Especially if you've got a bit of oil on you. If they've got some oil on you, you don't want to start a players association. Not there.
No, you're going to have to be whiter than white. Excuse the pun or the saying.
I don't think you need to be fun, though.
Hey, look, just to grab a question out of the. I like this question out of the chat room because it's a question that I've often wondered about too.
I think we all have.
Is it where does Pakistan get all its fast bowling talent from? Now, before you answer that question, we've seen from India that recently they've finally got some fast bowling stocks, but for years India couldn't develop any fast bowling or very limited fast bowling with the caliber that Pakistan has been able to do. How does Pakistan do it?
Oh, look, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer it, but I'll give it a go. I guess
you're the most started off person in this group to answer
it. I don't know if you know, like, historically Pakistan, Imran Khan was probably the first genuinely quick bowler Pakistan has produced. There might be others, but in the historically, no name comes up as quick. They were good, but like Fazal Mahmood, they were great bowlers, but no one was genuinely quick like Imran Khan.
Imran Khan,
and I think you probably sometimes you need role models.
Mm-hmm.
And with Imran Khan, his persona and everything, people just wanted to be like him. If you see Wasim Akram's first series, his hair and everything was like Imran Khan, I'll give you an example. I was born in 1980, and Imran Khan was he was a world-class player by then.
Yep.
I think 7 out of 40 in my class were Imrans. So coming back
to mum and dad, why am I not Imran?
So coming back to your question, yes. So I think Imran Khan was huge in getting some cricket in, fast bowlers in. But most importantly, in mid-80s, we had this tape ball cricket started, and tape ball cricket become quite big. you were supposed to have a short like run up, and you try to generate more pace. And that kind of because it's easy to play 6 overs, 8 overs, and you can play it for 1 hour and then you go home. So I think that really developed a lot more sort of I think quick arm actions and strange actions, and loading was better because of very limited sort of run up, and you have to bowl quick. So I think table sort of really revolutionized between mid 80s to mid 90s, and during that time heaps of fast bowlers start coming up.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at what you're talking about with the short run up, and short run up fast bowling. Wasim Akram, he had a short run up, but fired it in pretty quick, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
And
then obviously,
is that the biomechanical aspect? Is that the biomechanical aspect where you have a short run up, so you can't generate, so you've got to create that fast arm speed? If you take straight back to Junaid, our teammate, it's like you see him ambling in, and it just happens quickly. Is that a lot of table stuff?
I don't know. I mean, it can be. It's more like with table, it's cutthroat cricket. Like it's very competitive, and a lot of money involved, even at like lower level, And so, I mean, what happens there is like people are trying to sort of. I mean, batsman is not scared, right? Because he's not wearing any pads. You're just bowling a tennis ball. So you have to bowl quick and quicker to deceive the batsman. And I think, or you have to be deceptive, change of pace or whatever, and you learn all those tricks. And I guess like to survive in tape ball cricket, you have to be street smart and a bit quicker as well. Like, sort of quick, deceptively quick. So, I mean, if you see a lot of bowlers coming through now in Pakistan cricket, generally coming from tape ball cricket. So I assume that's one of the contributors.
Well, you've got that bloke from Big Bash that played came out of nowhere, straight out of tape ball. He played for Melbourne Stars.
Yep. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did really well too. Very successful last year.
Hey, we're gonna have to. Sorry, go Taz.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the run-ups and stuff, so these guys, I mean, like, don't have the tape ball bowlers usually don't have great run-ups. Like, they just. But their loading and their finish is so strong that they can still get around 145, 150 Ks. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we've got to ask the question. We've got to ask this question. Did you, while you were growing up in Pakistan, have Imran Khan here?
Pardon? No, I was too young. Actually, I did get some coaching lessons from him, though. Couple.
Yep.
No. I was a leg spinner back then, so.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna ask also. I'm just gonna go with Dr. Babaji's because he's got a great handle there. In terms of, I don't really understand what he's asking, but this might mean something to you. Do you think players' unions will put an end to the hegemony of sports boards establishment? If you understand what that means.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think. Obviously the cricket board and the players both are important for each other, right? The thing is, so far in Pakistan cricket in general, the cricket board has the upper hand. Whoever they want to, like, say, for example, they had issues with a lot of like big names, like, I mean, like, I won't name it, but they had a lot of issues with big names over the years. And which means that obviously if there is a players association, it balances it out, so it definitely is need of the hour, so that the guys can sort of obviously feel a bit more secure.
Yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate here. Like, we've got a very strong and well-run players association, and we've got a very strong head who's very fair. Like, Heath Mills does an amazing job for the local players, our domestic players especially. And we are very fortunate, and Australia obviously have a good body as well.
Darren, question for you though: would you say that what makes him great is he's actually pragmatic about the scenario, the situation of cricket in New Zealand, and the fact that he's not headstrong in terms of I'm a traditional union in terms of it's all about my boys and my players, but he actually does understand the environment that you're working in, and so he's pragmatic about working with NZC to make sure, yes, you've got to look after your players, but there's no point looking after your players if you're putting that at the detriment of the game. Would you say that's fair comment? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose the board is also very transparent. They share the numbers, they know the numbers, and they negotiate how much the player distribution, etc. So
Yeah.
once they've agreed, locked in on those terms, then it's a case of making sure the players get their due share. So they
Right.
do work well together, as opposed to going take, or give, or putting the hand out. Yeah.
Right. Well, moving on to before we move on to anything else out of the old chat room, you got well, I'll come to Mr. Kachopa there in a second, but any other things we want to sort of like in terms of global cricket or the subcontinent cricket, we want to sort of run past Taz?
Yes. Well, I want to talk about this ball wax applicator. Taz, obviously, we talked about fast bowlers. We know Pakistani bowlers can produce reverse swing better than anyone else in the world. What's this going to mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
The big pause. He's stuck. There's no internet over the shore.
He's not frozen, is he? He's frozen.
There's no internet over the shore, man. You guys need to move on this side of the bridge, the real side.
Oh, get the passport out too.
We're waiting to see whether we get Taz back in there. We'll
You
go
just didn't want to tell us how to actually get the ball to reverse.
It's a secret. It's a secret.
It's a national secret.
Doesn't want to give Pakistan successful edge away.
Secret, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll go with Mr. Kachopa. When you're coming out of retirement, Mr. Nathula?
Great Kachopa. You are far too young to retire. What are you doing retiring? You gold digger chasing big bucks elsewhere. Wonderful. Those of you who don't know, Craig Kachopa, the white ball captain for the Auckland Aces for the last few years, has full time on his career. One of three brothers. Now that you're actually on here, I may as well just embarrass you. One of three brothers, the most naturally talented, gifted of the brothers, the biggest and the strongest of the brothers. I'll keep it that way, and the only brother to have actually played county cricket. Good to see you, bro. You're obviously very bored in lockdown.
It's a sad day when you retire, I have to say, for Auckland cricket, though, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Being the legend that he is, with his representation there as well.
He's probably got a red wine in his hand too while he's putting these notes in.
Well, while we see if we can get Taz back on the line there. Going right back to the top of the show, I think it was Simon Hughes that asked the question around. Oh, we've got Taz back, but I'll just ask this question anyway while Taz sort of gets himself settled back in again, and he can join in on this one as well. Obviously, in the news this week, we've had Brendan McCullum talking about New Zealanders getting involved in the Big Bash, whether it's more player involvement or actually a couple of teams or one team coming across or going across to the Tasman. What do we think about New Zealand getting involved or greater involvement in the Big Bash? Take it away.
I'll start on this.
Go start on it, Sharon.
Listening. A few years ago, when I was involved with the Auckland setup, a few of the boys sat down. We kind of, as you do in 4-day cricket, when you've got the batters doing all the batting, the bowlers sit there and do all the planning, then talk rubbish and scheme like pie in the sky stuff. Wouldn't it be better, instead of having one team, to have a quota of an allotment of 15 players or whatever? Currently, the status quo is 9 players, 2 overseas and the rest are Australian, right, in the Big Bash. In the IPL, it's 7 Indians and 4 overseas. Can we not get to a situation where we have 2 overseas, X amount of New Zealanders, and the rest are Australians? So you could potentially see maybe 2 or 3 in a separate category of New Zealand players that get purchased by every franchise.
No, sorry, just to clarify, are you talking like more of a baseball America type style where you've got a massive roster and you've got slots within that roster, and then you pick and choose? Obviously, on the day of the game, you can pick X amount of players from each grouping. That's basically what you're saying, category. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay, so
New Zealand, you could potentially have 9 New Zealanders on your books. Based on the availability, you can only have any 2 in the playing 11.
Playing 11, yeah.
And then you can have 2 internationals and 7 Australians per se. Here's what you
bigger
reckon.
wage bill?
probably more attractive. Probably the competition doesn't need to dilute as much because they've gone from 6 states to having 8 teams. Having high-end New Zealand cricketers, domestic cricketers, or the top, the cream of the crop, not necessarily black caps, but the cream of the crop, like the Craig Kachopas and Errol Mitchells, those kind of guys. If they're playing there, I'm sure they'd do really well. Like Todd Astor would go really well on those grounds.
Yep.
He showed that New Zealand spinners are very good by taking a 6 for 3 or 4 years ago over there.
Yeah, he did very well.
What do
Taz,
you
what's
reckon?
your opinion on the old New Zealand players, or even Taryn's model in the old Big Bash? You would have
I
heard
think
the
it's a
news
good-
from Brendan in the
Better
last few
him
days.
too.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but the counter argument is like obviously the season clashes. So New Zealand, obviously domestic cricket is exactly the same time, and the premium time is obviously December, January, where you get more crowd in, and that's
Eyes on
when
the
Big
game.
Bash is on as well. So if Big Bash is run like say on a certain day, like a weekend or every weekend, that's a different thing. But if they're running together, I think that would affect New Zealand's sort of domestic cricket in a way. But I mean, the counter argument is like your player will develop more if they obviously your better players play against bigger teams on bigger grounds as well.
I'll
then you
piggyback on top of Taz's comments there, because I know that Brendan McCullum came out with this, and behind the scenes, although as I've mentioned in the morning sports briefings, David White's been a bit tight-lipped about it, but I believe they're sort of like, their view is that the cricket season will kick off as per normal in October, possibly without crowds, but possibly without international tours. Now, if that happens, what it looks like they're thinking about is having super teams, where they're almost like a north-south type competition. If they are looking at that, and Brendan's talking about New Zealand players going to play in the Big Bash, that's going to dilute those super teams, the north-south teams, and having that big sort of clash element, because now all of a sudden your top players are back over the ditch and playing in Australia.
I mean, our domestic competitions don't really see the international, the big boys anyway, because when they do come back, they're resting or they're coming back from injury.
But this year would have been an opportunity, right? Because international cricket is very iffy, and there's the high possibility that they'll be playing domestic cricket.
I'll throw something again. You've heard it here first. Tri-Nations, New Zealand, Australia, PNG. PNG are 15th in the world. They're not bad.
Right. Yep.
You could have a Tri-Nations with them. Or do you remember back maybe late 90s? Taz, you remember this? Australia used to have an Australia A in the, the Big series or whatever they used to have back then, the Commonwealth Bank series.
Yep.
Australia A will be strong. PNG, New Zealand, and an Australia quad series.
You could almost say just as opposed to an Australia A, they could just select two, maybe a West Coast team and an East Coast team, and so
that'll be Western Australia. That's it.
Well, no, you could just lump Adelaide, South Australia, sort of into the Western Australia. So line down just to the left-hand side of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, if the crowds are not allowed to watch them at the stadiums, right? So the main thing is coming from the TV or like television rights and stuff. So I guess like it has to be obviously televised in India or like subcontinent to get some money out of it. So it won't be a bad idea to somehow sneak in one or two players from that region, like, so that you can actually get, because you have to get enough players from certain areas where a lot more people watch, because New Zealand is, obviously just under 5 million. So it's not going to benefit Australia a lot, getting New Zealand players. But if they get someone like, a player like even Yuvraj Singh, who's almost retired or, at the other end of his career, but that would still bring a lot of people from India to watch it, like online or on TV.
Yeah, so
the reality is, and I think we talked about before we went to air, I think it was the discussion, or was it in the beginning, is that 14 days as a quarantine period isn't actually that long for a sports person, because usually they got to come into a sick country and they acclimatise, they have a few warm-up games or something like that, or that they can sit out, so that they've got training and the like. So you can actually get a couple, if you're not getting mass going along, you got to get government approvals on that, but it could happen.
Yeah. But that's going back to the old days, though. Didn't teams arrive pretty much 2-3 months in advance for the Ashes and play a whole bunch of domestic teams?
Karen, don't cut me deep, man. That's a sore point.
Yeah, well, it's a sore point around for
There's
us.
a
but
sore point with a few of us after
Of
last year's
recent-
tour to Australia.
Exactly.
What about turning the tables? What about Australians coming to play in our domestic league? We did have a few of the sort of almost retired players a few years ago. That seems to have gone by the wayside.
We probably can't afford them for what we pay, to be honest. But
That's why
but
we've got to.
Tess, how much, are you talking about those players need to be, if they come out of the subcontinent or highly populated cricket market, there's that marketing factor to it. So how much of that plays a part in their Big Bash picks? Because obviously Pakistanis and Afghan players are not necessarily draw cards the crowds, but obviously they bring them in. A lot of teams are bringing them in.
Yeah.
How much is that a marketing tool?
So I think from brand perspective, like Big Bash has grown bigger because it's I know they're not any Indian players playing, but like they've got players from even Bangladesh, and Sakibul Hasan played. So even one player playing in that league will make whole country watch the games, And
Oh look, I mean, actually, my mind's gone blank. But the Afghani player, the leg spinner from Afghanistan, superstar,
Rashid Khan,
Yep.
And they had four players from Afghanistan playing this year. And
They had
all, I think,
Zahid Khan, right? They had left arm spinner who was with Queensland. They had
Zahid.
Mujibur Rahman,
And
Zahid
Mohammed
Khan,
Nabi.
Nabi, and
Mohammed-
Rashid.
Khan, 4 players.
Yeah, the 4 guys that hold up that team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
Then you got-
cricket mad country. So, I mean, they all will be watching Big Bash,
See, I say, staying with that marketing front, you've got in the media, you've got Multan Sultan and Kolkata Knight Riders CEO, which is Venki Mysore, both expressing interest in the 100. Right, so obviously ECB is forecasting 380 odd mil in losses potentially. The 100's been pushed back. Initially, they wanted all control off their teams. There's the 100 format, but now these teams are expressing an interest. KKR, to give you a bit of background, own Trinbago Knight Riders. So they bring a wealth of knowledge in terms of marketing side. So how do you think that'll play when it goes to 100? Do you think that's a good thing, the way it should be franchised out more?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, like, because some boards are quite sort of, even like Indian boards and all the boards are quite sort of they're reserved about all these things. Like if you say, like, say Australia, how they run their Big Bash, they're quite controlled, centrally controlled. And I mean, ideally, if it is not centrally controlled and independently run franchises, like you do in soccer, right? And football, like, the English Premier League. So, the clubs they run at their own. So if something like that happens, if they open up to get like owners from outside, so for example, Kolkata Knight Riders and like Multan Sultan, Ali Tareen, I think if he owns one of the franchise, and so I guess like that changes a lot of things as well, because it's not just the owners, because they would like to have their own coaches and their own setup, and that kind of links the leagues, and then eventually, like that, like some of the coaches who coach a certain franchise in a certain country, they kind of take their same players. They try to take the same players, the same group of players everywhere. And that's something will happen.
Well, you see, it was funny you say that, because obviously Gale had a falling out with Jamaica. Guess where Gale's gone to? St. Lucia Zooks, right?
Yep.
Who owns St. Lucia Zooks? Any guesses? Kings 11 Punjab.
Oh, okay.
Who Gale plays for in the IPL.
So now he's becoming a company player.
No, Brendan McCullum, Colin Munro, both play Kolkata Knight
Riders. But that could be a logical progression, though, couldn't it? In terms of like, hey, come and play for my teams around these competitions.
Yeah. And I think it's slowly becoming, circus is the wrong thing. More like the sevens, it's the same kind of
circuit, not a circus, but a circuit.
Yeah. They'll just go from country to country, the same kind of coaches and same kind of model and leadership styles, just go from.
And that could probably make the teams more successful, because they have more consistency.
But I see
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Michael, you see it. Look, when they're playing in Trinity during that CPL time, every restaurant, every single person is wearing that TKR branding, and that's the kind of expertise these guys are probably likely to bring that cricket boards don't have the knowledge or the know-how to do it or the financial capacity.
So basically, what you're saying is that, like, you take the Super Smash, and what they've done with the Big Bash is Big Bash doesn't relate to the state teams, because I mean, obviously, you've got within Australia, with New South Wales, and Victoria, you got 2 teams. So New Zealand cricket should invite some of these Indian owners to come along and own a Super Smash team.
We'd have to play at 10 p.m. though for it to be a viewable time there.
Or 8
We'd have
o'clock.
to start the game at
10 o'clock.
So we just can't play at Eden Park. That's all that means.
But imagine playing at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, I've seen a couple of first-class players tune in, and I'm sure if you add another 0 next to their paycheck, they'll happily start at midnight as well.
Hey, look,
Imagine the conditions at that time.
the dew on the ball.
Yeah.
They'll be putting a few scrums down.
Oh, there's a few rugby applicators coming out, so I'm sure they can dry the ball.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Kookaburra's going to have to come out with a strip that keeps the ball dry.
Yeah. Taz, let's get on to it with the Taz.
I was good. Yeah, you wouldn't need spit on the ball, would you, if you play at that time? You have all that dew.
No.
Can you hear me?
Hey, look, it's been we're coming up to the hour now for our show, and it's just like it's been an awesome conversation. Taz, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show today. The conversation's been fantastic. It's been really in the chat rooms. We've got some good feedback on it. It's been great to have Aces representing in the chat room. Craig Kachopa and Matt Quinn there too. So, hey guys, thanks for tuning in and commenting as well. So, again, everybody, thanks for tuning in. It's been a pleasure bringing the show to you. Make sure that you share this with your friends if you've enjoyed it. Well, you know you've enjoyed it. So share it, like it, spread the word. You can listen to this on podcasts, all the podcast platforms. We're on iHeartRadio to download to your devices so that you can listen to it again when you're walking around. So, yeah, look. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. And again, to Taz, thanks for being part of the show today. And we'll see you again next week, 8 p.m. Thursday, for Swinging From the Hip.
Thanks, guys.